What is up, Royal Family? It's me, Noble Comics, here for the Noble Comics Show, Episode 2, the lunch hour today. A few things I want to talk about here that I've got up beside me. Let's get into it. First, I want to start out with the question of the day. So, question of the day today is: what is your favorite comic book series that you stopped reading for one reason or another? It can be comic, manga, whatever. If it's a show, tell me about your shows. For me, it was the Daredevil series by Charles Soule. Really, Daredevil in general. I really liked the series that he was doing. I think it was 2015 through 2018. I really liked the way it ended, and then Chip Zdarsky picked it up with his series, which by all means I heard was good. I know it just ended and got picked up again by somebody else. But at the end of that series, I stopped reading just because I thought it ended so well. And Daredevil is a kind of a unique comic book character, in my opinion, to where he is one of the few that is allowed to have really good character arcs and is allowed to change a lot from his base character that he started out as. And so you read the whole series, he went through so many changes, his character kind of came to an end, but then they just picked up the series, somebody else started doing it, and they took it and ran with it and did their own thing. And then, by all means, that I've heard is that this recent Daredevil series had a really good ending and everything like that, and just gets picked up again. So it's something that I've talked about before with these comic book characters in particular, is that very rarely do they actually get a chance to meaningfully change and reach any sort of ending because the inevitable reboot cycle takes place. So that one was pretty disappointing. I mean, what did you really expect? Of course, it's going to get rebooted and picked up. It's Daredevil, right? One of the big ones. So, but I did stop reading after that because for me, the character had finished their arc. So let me figure out how to stop sharing, and then let's get into it. So there's some new stuff I want to talk about. Let me close this out here. A few news items I want to get into after that little intro's out of the way. Let me make sure that I'm all good over here, and let's start showing that off. So the first thing I want to talk about, I'm a little bit slow to it. I had to find a time to actually do this. I had this all prepared prior to this, but just had to find the time. So I want to talk about this Mags Visaggio type thing with her Superboy story that she talked about. If you don't know anything about it, I will cover it all here. If you don't know who Mags Visaggio is, um, well, she is a he who is a comic book creator whose contribution to the comic book world has been pretty much nothing of note. Mags's entire career has been pretty poor writing, pretty poorly received by any of the fans. It's been a general disdain for the customer base. Nothing really has been contributed in any meaningful degree, and really wreckage is all that's been left in its ruin. So nothing good coming out of Mags Visaggio typically, and so this next story will be no surprise. And as we can see here, we have the bio on Twitter pulled up. Yeah, I think she did have a TV show that failed pretty quickly in one of her comic book properties, and she's often e-begging for money, and I mean that in the most literal sense, e-begging for money. Yeah, just take a look, drink it in. So let's get into what the actual whole situation was with Mags. So Mags thought that, what Superboy needs, what comics need in general, but especially Superboy needs more needs more transgenders. So as she said on Twitter, since it's never going to happen, yes, I was going to make Connor Kent a trans girl. I give you Skyrocket, my master plan for a story that will never happen. So with that, at least we get the acknowledgement that it's never going to happen. But we do get this insane script idea here of Superboy, I guess. Superboy doesn't know what direction to head to. Better become a trans person. And a few things on that is one, that's not how a normal person thinks, first of all. Two, that's especially not how a superhero thinks, right? Like a typical normal person, which I know superheroes are not typical normal people, but they exhibit certain traits that are admirable, right? Nobility and courage and strength and all that stuff. And if you have all those traits, there just is a weird thing where in life you're probably not going to end up being transgender. I don't know how that works. That's just how it works. And so I just don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's in the character. I think a lot of these changes that are made in modern comics don't really suit the character, they more so suit the creator. And that's where I think that this is definitely a giant self insert here. Because, of course, Mags is trans, a trans girl, trying to make Superboy a trans girl. And this fits in with a common theme of modern comic book creators, especially of this caliber, of insane self inserts. And it's really a lot of culture today, especially youth culture, is a lot of these weird self inserts. And of course, Mags is not the only one. I have a few here making up the gauntlet, right, of the self inserts. So we had, of course, Mindy Kaling, I'm not Starfire. The entirety of Miss Marvel is just Sama Amanat self inserting in that weird dude. Let's watch that again. That weird dude self inserting himself into the Powerpuff Girls series that he did for some reason. And now we got Mags here too. So here's Mags. See this design here? Yeah, it's very clearly a self insert. And I think that goes to a big point that I have about this group of modern comic book creators is that they very clearly don't like comics and they very clearly don't like comic readers, right? They like themselves. So they're not really setting out to make anything memorable or make anything good necessarily. They're definitely not trying to make anything that would grow the brand or the character in any meaningful way. They're looking for ways to insert themselves into the comics and make themselves memorable, right? And this is the only really way that they know how. They don't know how to write, they don't know how to tell a story. They just know this is how I'm feeling and how I am, so I better just inflict that on everything else, regardless of what came before. Because do you think that these people like read comics and appreciate them and like them and say, wow, that was a really nice idea. Let me expand on that and bring in something else? Um, no, of course not. They want to ship everything else to the wayside to bring in particularly what they like. And if you want to call that their agenda, whatever, that's what they're trying to bring in. And we've seen this for years now. We've seen it with stuff like from the very early on of everybody just turning gay. You know, Iceman's gay, Green Lantern's gay, Robin's gay, Aqualad's gay, and on and on and on and on. Or just race swapping characters, which is a problem in the comics, but not quite as big as like in the movies. But Marvel was very big on like, well, let's turn Thor into Lady Thor, let's turn Spider-Man into Black Spider-Man, let's turn, one after another. And it's again, it's not because they like Spider-Man, obviously not. It's not because they like Thor, obviously not. It's because they want to step on what came before to prop up what they're trying to present now. And again, not even for the sake of comics, probably just because they want to get like a TV show or a movie deal or something like that. They don't care about comics at all. It's at best a springboard that they want to use to launch to some other career. And Mags is no different here with this trans Superboy story. I mean, of course, no fans are asking for it. Nobody really wants it. It doesn't benefit the character or the universe at all. It doesn't really make any sense for the character or the universe. Yet it's going to be shoved in your face or tried to be shoved in your face because, you know, there might be some similarity here between this character and this writer. At the end of the day, I think it's just a big ego check for these people. And I don't understand it because, on one hand, these same people are the ones who will yell and complain about how they're discriminated against, whatever, how hard they have to push, and degrading themselves online and debasing themselves. Like I said, Mags will quite often e-beg for money, like because she can't make rent or whatever. So asking for some cash from her Twitter followers. But then on the other hand is saying, I am so important. My identity is so important that I'm going to erase the entire history of this comic book character and instead inject myself into that to completely replace it. And I don't quite get how that works. I don't know if anybody can explain that to me. How you can have both this extreme self-hating, degrading mentality, but also this insane ego where you're perfectly fine saying to generations of writers and everything that came before, saying what you've done is not important, what you've done doesn't matter, what I want is important, regardless of what needs to get shoved out of the way to make room for it, right? I don't quite get how that connect is made, but that is what we've seen here with what we could have seen here, I'll say. Didn't it actually happen? Thankfully, I think it would have been not great for the comic book community to have more of this stuff, but that is what they want. And I do want to stress here, when it comes to people like this, regardless of what political ideology if you're like totally pro trans, everything like that, if you're totally against it, anything like that, that doesn't matter in this realm, right? Because what it really comes down to is people like this who hate comics, who hate the comic book fans, regardless of who you are, and only want to push whatever their own personal ideology is onto you. Again, regardless of what the ideology is, because to them it doesn't matter what came before because they don't like it. It's those people versus us. It's the people who actually like comics, who actually read comics and appreciate the characters. You can be as far right or far left as you want to be and still have a deep appreciation for the character of Superman or Spider-Man or whatever in your own way, and can still be upset if a writer comes along and completely throws it out the window to push whatever they want to push, right? Like you don't necessarily have to be in any group to appreciate any of these characters. And I think that's where this particular issue is an important one, because I'm not saying, oh, we're all gonna unify together and kumbaya to kick out these people. No, you don't have to do that, right? But what I am saying is some of that I think should be pushed aside so that we can direct a message at these type of people who say, I don't care about your characters. I don't care about your stories. I don't care about the decades of history that came before. I'm here to torch it and leave behind some self insert of me in its place. Because these people, like I said, they can't write, right? They don't know how, because they don't know how to create. All they know how to do is take what is already existing and destroy it and leave behind ashes in their wake, right? And comic books are one community where this is happening, but it's certainly not the only one. We've seen this happen, or we see it currently happening in stuff like D&D. Warhammer is safe for now, but Star Wars and on in Star Trek, and a lot of it has had this same thing happen, where these people come in with no respect or care for what came before, and they leave it destroyed. And the manga fans out there who are looking down and laughing and saying like, well, it's not happening over here, it's like it's not happening over there yet. Okay, don't count them out, because again, they go from one place to the next doing this same thing, so they'll come for you eventually. So definitely appreciate the support, and I think we all should come together and say like, no, we don't want this. And I think we have, for the most part. There's been a pretty wide outrage against stuff like this, and I think the sales kind of speak for themselves. The sales are dropping for Marvel and DC. So hopefully them rejecting this story is kind of a message that they have some clarity, at least, right, with what they're doing. So on one hand, it's kind of disheartening that something like this got pitched, but it's also kind of nice seeing that it got rejected. So I guess that's just sort of a message, right? That this stuff's still out there, and hopefully that there is something built in place to stand against that. On to the next piece of news here. This was something that was been all over Twitter. If you're in comic Twitter at all, you've definitely seen this. And this is, the Shad Man here. Well, not the Shad Man, but um, this person was talking about AI art generation. And they put this tweet out here, which is ballsy. I'll give them that. It's ballsy. I kind of respect it. But they said, my skills are increasing. And he did make a video. He said, making a video as we speak, showing my process, how I get these results. the level of artistry needed, the technical knowledge required, and the amount of work involved, I think is going to shock people. And they show my AI art from 6 months ago, my AI art now. He says, don't let people tell you it takes no skill or that you just press a button. It takes real skill to be an AI artist. Now, AI art is like a huge hot topic in the comic community, hugely frowned upon, right? So, again, very bold to put this out here in the first place and to publicly be so pro AI art. And of course, the response to this, weren't great. Um, Vito here saying some not nice things about the art, and he used his wife's face as reference here. So, um, again, not happy with that there. We had other people saying stuff like, this isn't real skills. There's no talent to it. There's no heart to it. More people saying, writing a prompt doesn't make you an artist. It's not your skills increasing. So obviously, people were quite upset, not buying that this actually takes skill and everything like that. So what's what's my take on it? Look, I am not an artist. I drew pretty consistently from when I was very young up until I was about 18. And I was okay. I was never that good, right? I was all right. Definitely not comic book material, which is why I stopped drawing just to focus on writing. And I use some AI stuff every now and again just for mostly character reference and stuff like that because it is extremely useful. There's no reason not to use it if you're an artist or if you're not an artist. I think there is such an extreme backlash to it because comic book artists and artists in general are obviously very afraid of AI art. And it's not unjustified, right? Because it is definitely taking some portion of money away from them. Because before, and I remember like just, not that long ago, when you wanted a character reference done, you wanted some just concept art done for anything, or like if you had like a D&D campaign with your friends and you wanted a drawing of your D&D character, you'd have to go commission that for some artist on Reddit or Twitter or whatever to get that done. And now it's completely out the window. Anybody right now could just go immediately create create a reference, create a portrait, create concept art for whatever they want. And again, whether you're an artist or not, I think that is useful. But especially if you're not an artist, it's extremely useful to bypass this barrier of dealing with professional artists, which is often expensive, it's often slow, and you have to go out of your way to do it and deal with another person, which is always kind of a pain to do, right? So, um, it's not the easiest thing to do by any means, and it's definitely, in my opinion, way. I don't want to say it's a better thing now than it used to be, but definitely if you're not an artist, it is a better world now thanks to AI art for you, but just not for the artists who are obviously going to struggle from this. I do think that the insults that come out of stuff like this are a little much because look, I picked some here just scrolling down through his Twitter, picking some random ones here. And the things that are most consistently said are like, oh, this art that you have, it has no character, it has no heart, and yeah, you have no skill. Which all of that is pretty much true, right? I think there is sort of a soullessness to a lot of the AI art, which is fine. And no, it obviously does not require the same amount of skill as being an actual artist. I do think the insults come they are a little vicious sometimes, and I think it is just like like a primal fear, like where somebody stepped into your encounter or your enclosure, and now you're like backed up against the wall, and you have your fangs bearing because you're scared now because something's gonna come steamroll you, and it absolutely will. And that's the thing is the fear is justified. AI art will absolutely replace modern art. I think, especially we talk about the comic realm, I think it will absolutely replace it in a large degree. I think we're going to see many, many comics now made exclusively with AI art as it becomes smarter. It's able to do the same character in multiple situations. It's able to sort of work out some of those weird kinks with like maybe the faces and the hands and stuff like that, which for the most part are being worked out. They're definitely still there. It's not perfect by any means, but That's the thing too, is whenever they say stuff like, "It has no heart, da da da." What about the light? I saw people complaining like, "Oh, the light source is back here, but the light is reflecting on the front." Yeah, AI really is the future. Like, oh yeah, that sucks. It's like, dude, it's like who cares? Like, who cares? Oh, the lighting's here, but the light source is back there. You know how many people who look at this picture think that? Very few. They just think, oh, that looks cool. That looks good. Cool. And for most people, that's fine. Something that just looks cool. And that's really that all most people are looking for, is something cool. So again, I don't think this guy deserved to have his head bit off for this. I do think that the fear is to a degree justified. But no, I don't think AI art is the devil. I do think it is coming for you though, and you have to be prepared to handle that. I mean, because you look back the same thing with like autotune, right? All the bad singers really liked autotune, right? Because it gave them a crutch. So I think this is a similar thing where it's just a crutch for people who don't have the same skill. I think if you're trying to pass yourself off as being as skilled, you definitely need a reality check. But the people who are the best are still going to be the best. And I think there's still going to be a market for the people who are the greatest. But everybody else in between, yeah, you might get overrun. So sorry about that. Where are we at right now as far as time goes? 22 minutes? Okay. Another little piece of news is pretty recent. I actually don't have it pulled up here. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Let's do stop sharing. So this is gonna be the Eric July EVS stuff. Let me see if I can pull up Cyberfrog here. Let's pull up some of the most recent stuff. I know this is a bit unprofessional, but I just didn't have it ready. Yeah, so this one right here. Let's present. Okay. So this one here is kind of what I'm particularly talking about. So this was sort of the middle or maybe the end of this thing, but so to start from the beginning, this is a message from Eric July to Ethan Van Sciver, both huge independent comic creators, if you're not aware. And Eric July is in a little bit of trouble. He has a ton of haters just in general for his book ISOM, which I haven't read. It didn't really look that interesting to me. I didn't pick it up. But he's gotten a lot of backlash just on the book in general. A lot of people complaining about different art nitpicks and writing nitpicks and stuff like that, which I think they are just nitpicks. The book looks fine, but I think there is valid criticism there. Uh, and so that's kind of been a consistent thing since the book came out. I know recently something came up with one of his double page spreads, which was a truck in front of this castle. And somebody complained and said, "This is a terrible double page spread. Why does this truck take up the entire page? And then the castle, which should be the whole, focus of the thing, is in the back." Um, and Ethan jumped on that and said, "This is correct. Eric needs to take some criticism. This is a terrible double page spread." And then he called out to some artists out there and he said, can anybody out there do better? Can you take this double page spread and make it better? And I don't know if Eric liked that or not. I never saw his direct response to that, but I did think that was kind of like a bold step by Ethan to say, yeah, this does to call out another creator and say this does look bad. It should be done better. But it also is valid because yeah, it wasn't great and probably needed to be done better. Um, and I think Eric needed to hear that, whether he liked it or not. And then on top of all that, the bigger thing is that Eric is getting sued. There's like he's being sued by this other ministry called ISOM, which is ISOM something 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 Ministry, right? And so they've taken this name, they've had it trademarked for years. Eric comes along, names his character in his comic ISOM and starts using it. And now they're suing him for like copyright infringement because now whenever you search ISOM, the Ministry no longer pops up, but his comic book pops up. And the comic has like some Christian imagery. It's a Christian ministry. So they're saying that it's some valid copyright infringement. And now he's being sued. Leading up to this, this ministry has supposedly reached out for some sort of settlement, and it never actually got settled. Eric later claimed that this didn't happen. There was no easy settlement available. I think they wanted like recurring payments or something like that. And so now the lawsuit's moving forward, and he's obviously very upset. He made some video responding to it about how it's stupid. And look, from the ministry's perspective, I think they definitely just want money. I don't think they actually care that this character is called Isom. I don't think they care at all. I think they obviously just want money. It's a very successful IP, very successful comic. They just want a payday. Fair enough. It's their trademark. As far as Eric's concerned, one, I do think that his product is unique and differentiated enough that he's not infringing on their copyright. I mean, this comic character and this ministry are obviously different. On the other hand, how incredibly stupid to create this whole character and universe based on this ISOM name and not even look to see if it's trademarked or not try and trademark or not try and copyright it. Like at that point, you're just asking for trouble. What are you supposed to, it's like if you're the ministry who sees this, what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like at least do some due diligence and at least see, am I infringing on a copyright by naming my character this? Like that's something, I write comics. They're nowhere near as successful as Eric's, obviously. But whenever I'm just creating a concept for a name or a character, you can just go search the copyright or trademark registry and just see if it's there. And if it's there, it's like, okay, then I'll name it something else. Like it's really not hard. It takes 2 seconds. So I think I think on one hand from the ministry, it's a little like, okay, I see what you're doing here. You just want to make some cash. On Eric's side, it's like I see how it seems ridiculous, but also, come on, man. And so after some of that, EBS disagreeing with him in public about some of this stuff, this is a message that Eric sent to Ethan, where he said, I'm going to be 100. Going to be honest with you. I'm not going to be public about it, which is an interesting comment here after this got posted. And he says that Ethan is playing middle of the road and that he is not publicly defending him. And he said it's even worse that Ethan is lending some validity to the opposers to Eric, right? He's saying, well, they do have some good points, yada, yada, yada. And Eric obviously doesn't like that. And he pretty much is saying, he's pretty much saying in as many words that don't disagree with me again. That was not cool. Don't do it. And Ethan did not like that, right? So Ethan has said, I think that's actually on here, is that Ethan told Eric that he should be more open to criticism and that, right, some of these problems that he's got himself in, whether it's specific stuff in the book or with this lawsuit, is some of that's on him. He handled some of this poorly. He needs to be able to take more criticism. And he received this message, and Ethan says that felt like a threat. Eric said it's not a threat. Ethan obviously disagrees, and he says, look, it seems to me like what you're saying is, do not disagree with me in public again, or we're going to have problems. And it whenever I'm reading this, I don't think it's explicit like maybe Ethan's making it out to be, but I do think that you can read between the lines and kind of get what he's saying, where he's saying, if you're not agreeing with me, if you are evaluating each of these circumstances individually on their own merits, then you're playing middle of the road, right? Unless you're agreeing with me, you're playing middle of the road and you need to pick a lane. And the lane is with me or against me. And Ethan doesn't see it that way. And he never really has. I've been following Ethan on Twitter for quite some time now, and he usually tells it how it is, whether the people like to hear it or not. And his take is usually pretty reasonable. It's never really anything that extreme. It's usually pretty mainstream of what most people think. Yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that, or yeah, you probably should have done it like this. And some people can't hear that. So the feud between them has sort of sparked. Um, I don't think this is good for the indie comic community, obviously. Now, there's something where they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity, but I definitely think that there is, and I think this is a case of it. I think Eric comes out looking a lot worse than Ethan, even though a lot of the comments have been anti-Ethan, like we can kind of see here. You're putting a private conversation online, which when I saw that, I was like, yeah, posting a private screenshot's really not cool. But Ethan is backing it up by saying, "Look, I didn't ask for this conversation. He messaged me out of the blue. There was no agreement that this would be private, except for up here where he says, let's not be public about this. But this unsolicited message, he says that's fair game. And again, if I feel threatened or whatever, that's fair game for me to post out there." I don't completely agree with that. I don't know if this was the right move, but I think with stuff like this, Ethan's probably smarter than me. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that he knows what he's doing here. But yeah, I think that Eric does look bad because you absolutely have to be able to take some criticism, and you absolutely have to be able to laugh at yourself to a degree, right? You can't be defensive. And Eric's obviously a good businessman. He's obviously extremely successful here. But his entire demeanor and personality from the beginning, I personally didn't really like. That's why I didn't buy the book, because I don't really like Eric in general. He seems like he's kind of he seems like he obviously thinks very highly of himself, which he is very successful. So why shouldn't he? But you do kind of get that defensiveness from him where it doesn't seem like you could air any sort of complaint or frustration from the guy without him trying to take it as some sort of personal slight. Versus with Ethan obviously thinks very highly of himself as well, and he's obviously very successful too. But Ethan can take criticism pretty well. If you tell him what you didn't like, he can hear it a lot better. And I think that is in the independent market where you don't have Marvel and DC or any of these distributors, helping you out. It's all about this direct communication with the fans and the buyers, and how do they perceive you. And if you're somebody like Ethan who's perceived as more easygoing, as more right, like, oh, you can actually talk to him, you can complain, he'll hear it, but he's obviously proud of the work that he's done. That is way easier of a sell for me. It's like if I'm going to buy their product, than someone who can't take criticism. And anytime you try and say anything to them, they take it as like some sort of insult, and like lash out at you. Because that was the thing that I had with a lot of actual comic professionals, like Donnie Cates and a few other guys were on Twitter years ago. I would air some complaint, and they would just like go nuclear on you. It's like, dude, like I was a fan up until now, but whenever you behave like that and you can't hear it at all, then I'm out. I'm not going to buy your product anymore. And who knows if that's going to happen here. Um, Obviously, I hope that the lawsuit with the guy gets resolved easily, right? I don't want any financial hardship for anybody or anything like that. But at the same time, it's like, dude, you got to take some personal responsibility and some credit for this. You've set yourself up in this situation. You, it sounds like, had some opportunity to resolve it, though obviously I don't know any of the inner workings of this lawsuit. But I think that this communication here, it definitely doesn't bode well for the comic scene, the indie comic scene, because like I said before, if you're making indie comics right now, especially this direct to consumer sort of crowdfunded stuff, it is sort of the mentality of like, look, it's us versus them, because there's no safety net for us. There's no built-in distributing or built-in advertising. It's just us. It's whether the comic succeeds or doesn't succeed is more individual, right? Like if I back the book, maybe it makes its funding goal, maybe it doesn't. It's all based on it's us. Like the consumer actually has a lot of power versus Marvel and DC. They can throw out 100 different Batman books all at once, and whether they're successful or not has nothing to do with us. Whether we buy it or not, it doesn't really matter to them, because the stores have bought it and they've they've advertised it like this. Maybe they can turn it into a TV show. Maybe they'll do this or that or the other with it. Whether we buy it or not makes no difference. But whenever you're here in this more intimate scene, it really is a lot more important for the creators and the fans to be aligned, and for the creators and the fans to have some sort of healthy, open communication with one another. Because again, these are individual creators' dream products that they're making. It's not just some guy making another Batman run. This is like my character I've created. I'm putting it out there, and I'm hoping that you, the fans, don't let it fail. And it really requires a strong connection with the creator itself because, again, these are all new IPs for the most part. You can't walk into it saying, like, oh, yeah, I'm a Cyberfrog fan. I'll buy another Cyberfrog book. Because before this, there was no Cyberfrog. It's not like Batman where you know the character. You always buy Batman. But no, it's a lot more of the creator focused and really relying on the fan base being there to catch them if they fall and help them out. And I think that is a benefit of the community, is the fact that one, it doesn't take so many people to be deemed successful. A few thousand backers can make a book wildly successful. And two, there's a closer connection to you and the fan. You can reach out directly to Ethan on Twitter or any independent comic creator on Twitter, talk to them, tell them you like the book, and they will, that means a lot more to them than if you buy their Batman book, if you're buying something more personal to them. So whenever you have conflict like this, and it's not rare in the indie comic book world to have conflict like this, I think that creates a disconnect with the fans, because the fans don't want to hear this. They don't want to see any of this on their timeline. They want to see new stories and exciting books and stuff like that. And all this can do is give bad optics to both creators. I don't think it's going to help either one of them in the end, and it's probably going to hurt potential buyers the more that this happens. So I hope that this gets resolved. I hope stuff like this doesn't happen quite so often, and we can have some sort of alignment. Um, and that just the petty drama just needs to stop. But I'm not the first to say it. I will not be the last to say it, and the petty drama probably will not stop. But that is all the news that I had today. Let's do a quick versus battle as soon as I find out how to stop sharing my screen. They put it on a different tab in like every screen. So let's share, not that one. Okay. So I have created here a versus battle randomizer that I put together in Google Sheets. And the way it works is I have a list here of 500 something characters from different comics and media. And then I have two randomizer codes here. So we'll see how this goes. Let's try it out. This one we got here, Black Panther versus Black Canary. That's got to be, I don't know what the chances are to get like, black animal versus black animal, but that's pretty good. But that's not the one we got to go with. We got to do a fresh one so it doesn't look staged, a fresh versus battle. And if you have characters that you want on here, let me know. We'll throw it into the battle. If you have original characters, maybe that too. We'll see. But let's go. Okay, that's a bad one. Thoughtbot Superman versus Savage Dragon. The Thoughtbot Superman is like a multiversal being, so I think he wins that one. Let's get a good one. Batman Who Laughs versus Iron Giant. Okay, probably Iron Giant. Luffy versus Iron Man Bleeding Edge armor. Let's make that longer. It's not a bad one. Nick Fury versus Garfield. Come on, I want a good one. Cardinal, that's my original character there, making an appearance. Batman, Darth Bane. Dark Thor versus the Ebony Maw. We got some good ones here. Come on, something good. At least this will give you a good idea of what we've got here. Lots of different ones. Ooh, this is a good one. I think that this is a good one. This is Gore the God Butcher from Marvel Comics versus Aku from Samurai Jack. Now, Gore the God Butcher has that black blade that he uses to kill all the gods. And Aku, I don't know if he's technically a god, but his whole thing is that he could only be damaged by the magical sword of Samurai Jack. So, and Aku, if you don't know, shapeshifter, Very powerful. You can shoot some laser beams out of his eyes, and again, that whole thing of only damaged by, right, by the magical sword. Let me see here. We've got Rendon King here who says Aku takes it, and it depends on how we want to play it, right? If we want to say, look, Aku has invulnerability except for the sword, then I think he does take it. If we want to give Gore the God Butcher some benefit of the doubt and say, look, we're going to assume that your God slaying blade can hurt Aku, then I think he has a chance. I think that he is a very powerful being. He's probably faster than Aku is. We've seen him kill quite a few gods, but he couldn't kill Thor, and he did lose against Thor before he had Mjolnir. If you remember in that story, he managed to kidnap Thor and was torturing him, but Thor bit his eye out, and it was able to wound him with Yarnbjorn pretty bad. Um, at his most powerful, Gore could probably win. But you know what? I like the Aku win. I think that he could pull it off, right? Okay, should we look at a few more while we're here? After this, I don't have much left. I can get into this pretty briefly. Oh, let's click back in. Garfield versus Doomsday. Garfield, obviously. Ronin versus Bloodshot. That's actually not bad. That's Ronin. Actually, I was gonna say that's Ronin Hawkeye. Let me see what we have here. So here, Gore is still mortal and Aku time travels. That is true. I didn't think about that. Yeah, Gore still is just a regular creature. And with time travel abilities, that would be wild if you sent Gore into the future where his evil is law. And now the foolish Godslayer has to get back to the past. I'd watch it. Yeah, that back to this one though. That actually might be Ronan the Accuser, which isn't so good. Ooh, that would be a good one. The Ultra Instinct Goku versus Kevin 11,000. Yeah, from Ben 10. But no, I won't jump into a whole bunch. But I've got a huge list here. Again, I've probably, if you have a character you want on the list, I probably have it on there. But just let me know and I can be sure to add it on there. But yeah, great fights. I'll be returning to this for sure. But let me hide real quick again, just so I can pull up some stories. This one, and we want this one. We want these two. Okay. So one thing I want to do here, let me present yet again. Let's just do this whole window. What I want to do here towards the end of these live shows, if I keep doing these, which I want to, is to sort of promote an indie comic, because I am definitely more of an indie comic guy now than I ever have been, and definitely am more of an indie comic guy now than mainstream. I prefer this over Marvel and DC for sure. But this is a book by Per Berg, Narwhal, if you know him on Twitter or on YouTube, Narwhal, and he makes great stories. He's started with this Earthbound series, Earthbound 1, 2, and then Earthbound Grand Prix, which are all very good. He did Foreign Agent, which is really good. He just had a book called Cerberus, which I think fulfilled. He did a Nosferatu story. He's done a ton, actually. I think we can see how many projects he's had here. 10 projects. He's done quite well. His books are all very good, highly acclaimed, even by some comic book professionals like Mark Miller. And this is his most recent story, his latest story over here on Indiegogo, Hotel Story. It looks very good. And I will say too that if you're looking for indie comics that give you a lot of value, he gives a ton of value, because a lot of them they'll charge like 25 bucks for 48, 60 pages, something like that. But his, I think, are a lot more reasonably priced for what you're getting. Definitely check it out here. It's very interesting. His art style is very unique, and his writing style is very good. Very good interactive stories. So if you haven't checked this out, go ahead and check it out. He's at 12.5 right now, which is not bad at all. Um, so yeah, be sure definitely to go check that out if you haven't already. Not saying you have to buy it by any means, but definitely I think it's worth looking at and thinking about. And then just to plug my own thing here. So this is Displacer. This is my second graphic novel that I've funded here on Indiegogo, and it's currently being fulfilled. There has been a setback with the printer that we're still trying to get worked out. It's been a months long endeavor getting this figured out, but it should be shipping to me by the end of the month, is what I have been told. But we'll see if that actually happens this time. But it is still available for purchase. I would say definitely check it out as well. The Displacer Supernatural Detective appears where he is needed, and he can't return home until he solves the problem he has been sent to solve. I think it's pretty good. Displacer 2 and beyond are currently in development. So if you haven't checked it out again, please at least visit the page. Let me know what you think. I think there's kind of like a discussion page over here. If you want to write a comment and say stuff you like about it, stuff that you think should be improved going forward, anything like that. And if you want to follow it, I think you still get updates from me. So if you're saying, hey, I only want to back it once it gets shipped, I think you can follow it. And then whenever it actually gets shipped, I'll put out an update letting you guys know, like, hey, fulfillment starting now. So you can see that, it's actually coming out now. So um, check out those. Let's stop sharing again. This stupid stop sharing button, just every single page, it's on a different page. And then one thing real quick before I go, because I'm just about at the end here, is I've got some of these 10 scale clips here, and I'll show you what I mean. But it's like 1 through 10, each with like a different, for like a ranking system, because I have like a set ranking system that I do when I rank movies and stuff, where like 1 is the worst ever, 10 is perfect, 5 is meh, 7 is good, different stuff like that. And I want to use them. Originally, I created these for the costume reviews that I did, but nobody watched the costume reviews, so I stopped doing them. But I need something I would love to do in the show that uses these, and I'll show you what I mean. So something like let's do 2. So that's 2. Then you have like
Yes! Hell yeah! Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on!
stuff like that. I don't know. What can I rank or review or something like that that people would actually be interested in? Because you could do like, what's new on the shelf this week? Let's look at this issue of Daredevil. But the people actually care to say like that one was a 2 or something. It's like open for suggestions, whatever you think. If you guys can come up with something that I could rank or review, I'd love to, because I have these sitting around and I'd love to use them for something. But that is what I've got. And I do see this comment here saying Apollo versus Captain Marvel. And I do think both of those characters are in the randomizer. I'm almost certain both of them are in the randomizer. So it could pop up. I don't know enough about Apollo to give a definitive response on that. But it's a potential. They're both in there. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Again, this is sort of a new format I'm doing versus the first one, where it's like I try and do a question of the day, do some news, do this randomizer, try and do a bit of a promo. I'd like eventually to maybe have some guests that I can do this stuff with too. Maybe to so that they can promote their book or something like that, and we can just look at it directly and have the creator talk about it a little bit. I think would be cool. But let me know what you guys thought about this format. If you think it worked, if you think things need to be changed or added or removed. I'm open for anything, so just let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.